I'm your co-host, Kenny Buller.
I'ma clap the trappers, cause y'all in the for them actors.
Welcome on the Second Floor Podcast.
I've been rolling around with all my goons and all my savages. I just want the
We would have dreamt of something like this, and here it is.
Ray Ray with the heaters, got the track sounding immaculate.
Looking kinda dapper, but it be chillin', this don't matter about my business, so I spit.
What's going on, guys? It's your co-host here, Kenny Buller, on the Second Floor Podcast. I'm with my boys, Qashus and Khurram Sultan. And you know how we do. We talk about current events, latest trends in business, and we like to keep you updated on how to elevate in your life and your business. So here's today's topic. When should you grow your team, and how do you go about growing your team? It doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be a business owner. You could be a manager inside of a corporate company. You could maybe be a basketball coach and you're wondering when to get your next all-star player. Whatever it is, I want to talk about growth. Mainly because I feel like all three of us are currently in that stage recently, or we're about to embark on that stage. And I really like to bring on topics that are really relevant to the times of what we're dealing with. So I want to ask you guys, what made you recently decide that you actually needed to add another team player? Like what was that ultimate like moment or kind of that realization where you're like, if I don't add this person, I'm not growing the direction I need to?
Well, I'll start just off of this, is that I think number one, especially if you are trying to build a business or you're in an industry and you want to dominate and you want to be a real key player in the industry. I think one of the things is we know that we can't do it on our own. We know that. And so if you think you can do everything on your own, you can, but you are not going to scale at the level of other companies, other businesses, other individuals who eventually, do incredible things and make the biggest impact. So you know that you should delegate. And this is something that, Khurram and I and Kenny and I, we've discussed this, years ago when we started our path and our own individual paths of, filmmaking and stuff like that. I started off as a freelancer, and then, you go into, I worked in marketing, I worked in a marketing gig, and then eventually, opened up Q Films and then all of a sudden you get a team and all that. So I think the importance of building a team is something that it needs to be recognized. Now, building a team is something that, there's many different paths. A lot of people who scale might say, you know what, we're ramping up and we need to just get as many players in as possible. My own business, I've realized that I personally like the organic growth and not bringing in a million different people into the business, because I like the control. I like to have creative control, but I also like control over the business and where the ship is heading. So there's a saying that says, you could, instead of having, 10 players, it's better to have, 2 or 3 all-star players, because they could do the exact same amount, if not more, and have a bigger and better impact on your business. So I think for me personally, I think I'm looking for those all-star players. I'm looking for the guys that can do double or triple what the individual who will just do the job for the sake of doing the job. So I think the biggest key here is that will this person fit with your values and your principles and the ideals of where your business is going. Number two, can they meet the expectations that you have of the job description, and can they exceed it? Are they willing to take initiative on certain things that may be gone unspoken? I have a team member on my team who, any situation I put him in, I'm not even worried, because he's going to figure it out. If we're at a wedding shoot and batteries are missing or memory cards aren't working or a camera dies, this guy is going to figure it out to make sure to get that shot. He's going to go to Shoppers. He's going to hop into a cab. He's going to do whatever it takes to make sure that shoot goes 100% without calling me, and that's a big thing. Whereas I've had players in the past who every little thing is like, oh, I didn't get the shot because, I didn't have the memory card. I didn't have this light. I didn't have this specific lens. And I'm talking about this based on my own media production company. Whereas you have players who are taking initiative, getting there extra early, who are staying later, who are thinking about, okay, Omid told me, Qashus told me, this is the way to take this shot, but I think I can do it better. I think, you know what? I think Omid told me this way, but I think I can do it a lot better. And here's why. And then they go out and do it without you even asking. And that to me is much more valuable than having 3 individuals to get the job done. So I think though, just to keep it, I can go off on a tangent about this, but I think that those are some key things to think about when you're building a team.
Man, Qashus just hired on brother Sean, and he's in the background right now. He's writing notes. He's taking down notes, man. I love that.
It's Shane, but yeah.
Oh shit! See,
Brother
My
Shane.
bad. Brother Shane.
Yeah.
You know what? With what you're saying is really cool. Is that initiative piece is everything, man. Like, I just hired on another coach on our team, and this was really cool the way this played out. He had one of our students chat with him right after jiu-jitsu and was like, oh man, like, so like what do you kind of specialize in? And brother Adam's like, man, I specialize in calisthenics. You know, like and basically for those that don't know that, it's body weight exercising, being able to really incorporate your core. And the guy's like, sweet, we don't really have that at Brabe. Like, we kind of have a version of that, but why don't you do a calisthenics class? Right away, within 15 seconds, Adam went, Kenny, would it be cool if we did something like that? I'm like, run with it. Let me know the time, let me know the dates. Within a week, we got that class up and running. The first day, 5 people showed up. And when you kind of compare this to kind of the mindset of someone that just expects things to just happen for them and maybe just expects someone they're working under to just kind of like give them everything and just put food, like put it all on sort of a platter. It's like, it doesn't happen like that. It's the person that like creates something, shows up, puts the reminders in the group to continuously see something unfold. You know, and I think that type of mindset, it'd be great if we had every single one of our hires that way. So it's really nice from your mindset, the way you can kind of figure out that you're building an all-star team with people like that.
Well, yeah, and there's a thing too, is that sometimes, you know, we're human, so we might not be bringing on potentially the right members on our team. We might bring on somebody who initially does amazing, and then all of a sudden you see productivity go down. And one thing actually I want to add to this is that where I realized where individuals go downhill is when communication starts to fade. So when I'm trying to text you, before I could get a hold of you right away, all of a sudden texts take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to respond. They're not reading their WhatsApp messages. I'm calling them and then I notice that, and I've had many team members over the last few years, and I've seen this downward trajectory is when I message you and you don't get back to me right away, or within a reasonable time. I'm not talking about like instantly, but if you don't get back to me at a relatively reasonable time and it happens reoccurringly, I know something's up immediately. I'm like, this person's behavior is off, because normally they would get back to me around this time, but now all of a sudden they're not responding. I'm having to call them. I'm having to like try to like get a hold of them. That means something's off, whether that's they've checked out, whether they're finding a new gig, whether they're changing paths. That's one major piece. Another piece is that sometimes we hire the individual and we feel like they're not the right fit. But I know a lot of business owners who will keep the person on because it's like, damn, you know, Sarah's running this, 3 jiu-jitsu classes. They're running 3 basketball ITD, classes, but they're doing like 70%, maybe 60%, 60% on average, 70%. And you need them to be at like 90 or at least 100. But you're like, bro, I can't fire Sarah, because if I fire Sarah, who's going to run those classes? Mm-hmm. What's going to happen then? I say rip the Band-Aid because the longer Sarah is in your organization, the longer you're missing out on an all-star player. The longer Sarah is in that organization, sorry, Sarah, I'm just putting you as an example, but it's just a random name. But that individual is holding you back, is anchoring you. the longer you say, but man, I'm really good friends with Sarah. Sarah's doing an amazing job. Like, she was great first 3 months. And then all of a sudden, every time you tried to like sugarcoat your way into like talking to her and say, hey, like, can I be of support? Can I help you on certain things? They're like, no, like, I'm good. Oh no, mom was late for work, so I had to drop her off. That's why I was late for the class. That's why, and there's an excuse for everything. There's an excuse for everything. And to me, that's like, it's like, you need to like sit down and just say, you're not, you suck right now. And just remove the Band-Aid and just don't sugarcoat it. And, it'll go one way or the other. Either Sarah will wake up and say, oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. Qashus, it's the last few weeks have just been stressful. So-and-so's having, no, I'll get back on it. I know what you mean. Or it's the other way and they get offended and then they leave. But you are holding yourself back and anchoring yourself. And the longer you do that, the less time you have for an all-star player.
Yeah, I guess to even add on like your original question on when to know when to hire somebody else on the team. I love the points that you guys made because it's hard finding the right fit for your program because it's your program and your business is like your baby, right? So somebody else could come in and influence your baby to do something you don't want them to do. So obviously finding the right fit, but I think in terms of knowing when to find somebody to join your business, for me is like when I would leave to LA or wherever I'm going, the business would shut down for a bit. Right. So to me, I knew it was time to hire more people and it's time to actually level up to that point where when I'm gone, things should still be rolling. They should still be running. And that to me is like what I'm kind of working towards right now.
It's nice to kind of recognize that because I think sometimes we're at fault as business owners to feel like no one's going to do it better than me. And sometimes this is where I kind of counter your argument, Omid, where you have to accept that no one is going to put actually 100%. If someone does 90, well, I mean, I'll be honest. I'd rather look at that 90% that's better than nothing, right? I think it kind of depends on your field of work, right? I kind of saw that similar to what I'm going through. And when I saw that in someone, actually, they came to me and they then said and recognized that they actually weren't putting 100 in. And I actually very fortunately had another person to fulfill their role right away. So we got, you could say, lucky, but also we recognized that if I look back, I actually accepted their 70 to 90%, right? I looked at that like, you know what? The glass is half full. It's better than no one right now. And I will be honest, I was giving this person a little bit of leeway, and I was trying to just be like, maybe it's just them trying to figure it out right now, but we were having those conversations about, we got to put more in, and when you do, you'll see the reward, right? Mm-hmm. But I kind of want to look at it this way too. Going back on the topic of growing your team and when you know you should do it. Here's my thing with that. You kind of got to recognize when you're involved in whatever it is you're doing, what do you do so well that can't be replaced? Right now, in my circumstance of running a gym, it's coaching the jiu-jitsu class. So out of everything, I need to be that. I need to be there for that. Now, here's the other aspect of it. Sales, onboarding, calling certain individuals to come in. This I could teach a 15-year-old to do, right? However, I'll be very honest with you guys. I held on to it. And I think I need to be honest with our listeners too. There's things you're doing in the business that you feel like, number one, you like a lot, and number two, you are good at. So now you're like, I don't want to let go of this. But then in terms of what you guys are talking about, scaling, you got to be willing to let go of those things if you do want to grow. And it was kind of cool, man. We phased it out, and I really like this phase out process. I recognize that first where, okay, I'm at a point right now where we can at least get someone to just do the calls. They can handle the phone calls to get booked in. Now I don't have to do that. I just have to, whoever shows up, talk to them. But now we reached a point where it's been a lot of late nights. I'm at Brave for 3 more hours than I need to be. Now it's time we actually hire like a full-on receptionist. And in the process of doing so, I'm actually getting excited because I'm seeing how this time can then be reallocated to what matters. And that's checking in with existing members. That's actually being a full-time jiu-jitsu coach. That's taking the time to learn more and developing our curriculum. But like, it's kind of unique to be in a position in your business to be like, yeah, like maybe it's time I don't wear this many hats. And I feel like sometimes you argue that maybe you should because of like where your business is currently at, or no, maybe you shouldn't because if you add this person in the team, it's one less thing off your plate. And you become so protective of it because of how good you are at it or how good you feel about it, right?
Right. Well, I think just to add to that is I think in order to delegate better, you need better systems. You know, at the end of the day, if you have a certain sales system, Kenny, that is working for Brave, you got to figure out how to transfer that over to the next person. But you don't want to just transfer it all over to one person. You need some systems, operational procedures that, whether it's a book, video, how the process, how do you teach this individual to take on sales at a level that is acceptable for your business? You know, at the end of the day, I've seen so many over this past year. I'll tell you, I get so many resumes. I get filmmakers, videographers, people from Nate, all over the place who will knock on the door and give me their hand. There's so many different people and so many different experiences. I get lots of resumes, but it's not about the resume. You know what I mean? It's not just about the resume. There could be, I guarantee you, if you put a receptionist ad on Kijiji, I'm sure you get 300-400 hits at the very minimum. You get 300 or 400 resumes. So how do you differentiate? How do you get the right individual to take the role on? Partially it's the resume, but then initially it needs to be a system that they can come in and meet the standard at where you're at. Because if you're saying, Kenny, that you're okay with 70%, if Khurram's okay with ITD with a ITD trainer that just does 70% of what he wants to do, or 60% of what he wants to do, then that's the culture he's building. That's the culture you're building. You're okay with 60%, where I know you're not.
Yeah, that's facts.
Right? If you're okay with a receptionist making 10 calls a day instead of 100, that's your standard. I know business owners who will stretch their employees to the freaking brink. Now, that is the extreme. The extreme is you stretch someone up so much where they get frustrated with you and they leave and they can't take it. However, I say the bar is here. If the bar is here, take it up a few notches. It's okay with a little pressure. How many calls do you think is appropriate? If it's 20, you think it's 20, then make it 25. Push that individual a little bit.
It's actually really unique because I want to pick your brain about that. First of all, I'm really glad you said that because it's a wake-up call to recognize like where are your standards, right? Because if your standards are 60, 70, then you're going to get that. And then all of a sudden, once you keep going more and more away from the picture so you can kind of see it all, to Khurram's point, like you can walk out that door and trust things are going well. Now they're going well at 60, 70, right? Now, based on that, I did want to add something, but now I'm losing my train of thought. I was going to add to it, but fuck, I forgot.
For the receptionist piece or like adding the...
Yes, no, thank you. You reminded me.
Yeah.
Here's what I was going to say. Even personally for me, I'm not tracking how many people I'm calling. I actually, in a really unique way, this really changed for me. Because let's face it, if you're in any sales role, even beforehand, numbers. I don't think at any point when you keep having to think of numbers, it makes the role any more exciting. Embarrassing. Even when you train, I don't know how it is with hooping, but in jiu-jitsu we talk about the fact that you shouldn't just go into a class and even teach or do, oh guys, we're going to crank this out 100 reps. Go 100 times. One would think, oh wow, like, man, wow, you did that 100 times? No. You go until you understand it. You go maybe at a certain duration of time, so you're not thinking about how many times you're doing it. You're thinking about doing it and getting better at it. So here's how we can flip that from a sales perspective. I'm not tracking how many calls I'm making. I'm tracking how many people actually said yes. I work backwards. So now from the amount of people that say yes, how many people showed up? From the amount of people that showed up, how many people actually ended up saying no. Now from the amount of people that said no, what happened there? And now I'm trying to track that data, the actual, like, what is making this person actually show up and what is making this person say yes.
No, I get that.
As opposed to the calls. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm busy with the calls. I'm in between drives hammering the calls. I'm figuring out different ways of contacting people.
But the thing is you're willing to do that because it's your business. I would say I could ask Khurram right now what he would do for his business. He'd probably do anything, right? He'd fly somewhere. He'd grab whatever he needs to in order for his business to continue running, right? But an individual that you hire may not have that same drive and motivation to do that. So how do you transfer over that level of excellence to them? You need a system that is proper and a system that allows them to be able to see. Like, there's a CRM system called Nutshell, and in the corporate world, a lot of people know this and they use this. Nutshell tracks activity for salespeople and customers. You can see when was a phone call made, when was an email made, when was a text made. Now this is somewhat of, you could say, micromanaging, but in a system where you're able to dissect afterwards what happened. You made 100 calls this week. One person showed up at the Brave MMA Fitness. One person showed up at ITD Academy. Well, there's a gap there. Just because they made 100 calls doesn't mean they're doing the right thing. Just because they put in 100 reps doesn't mean they did the right thing. But where is the gap? Maybe it's a system. Maybe you think that, hey man, this is how I do my calls. You should do it like this. But it could be completely wrong. It maybe works for you, but it might not work for your team because they don't have maybe that sort of personality or the way you do it. And that system is not transferring over. So how do you now dissect that? You still need to track those calls, in my opinion. In my opinion, you still need to make sure that they make 100 calls, but now you have to dissect where in that bottleneck is it falling off? Where in that system are things going astray? Because then you'll be able to see. Then you'll be able to track it properly.
Yeah, I guess to add 2 cents, because you guys are far in deep into this combo. Damn, I'm over here like a fly on the wall, which is good, and I actually like hearing the perspectives. But I guess to just add in, the 100 calls, like, how are they making those 100 calls? One thing that I've been struggling with is finding the right rate for a job that typically isn't a job, right? Like, basketball training is somewhat newer, and I think you can relate to this, is how do you put value on that? So in terms of getting the person excited, so I'm trying to find the right rate with the right incentives. So then if they are trying to get clients and they're making 100 calls, are they excited making those 100 calls because they feel like there's a reward system or the system set up in a way to benefit them at the end? Or is it where the 100 calls, they make the 100 calls and their job title, if they did 150, it's the same thing as 100, right? So I think to go back to, like, I think both tracking and incentives for them to be excited to make those 100 calls is both important.
I'll add to this too, because not every incentive is monetary as well. Mm-hmm. So you can think, okay, well, if I increase the rate or if I increase the incentives, they're going to show up even more. That's incorrect. Certain people will. Certain people, if you raise their hourly rate or you give bonuses or incentives, they will, do more for the business. But I believe there is a certain individuals that will go towards that, and it's just monetary based. But certain individuals aren't motivated just strictly by money. I have a team member personally who isn't motivated by money. He needs money to survive and continue living. He's more motivated by growing and building. He sees the vision. I've sold him the vision. So now as the vision is sold, great. As long as I continue to pay fairly, of course. This isn't like no
scam.
I'm going to give you bigger vision, lower compensation.
Exactly. It's not. There's a balance of compensation but there's also selling the vision, because if the team or if your team is excited about where you're heading, I 100% believe that they will in the rough times, you can be honest with them, and they will stick with you. Now, some people won't. Some people see it as a job. Maybe it's a receptionist job. There's a million receptionist jobs. They don't really align with the brand that much. But maybe there is a receptionist that aligns with the brand really well, and they want to see the brand truly succeed. You need to find that individual. I argue you need to find that individual. You don't, man, you could pay somebody $500 an hour to do something. You could lose money in the business. That'll motivate to a certain extent. Trust me, there is a cap on how much an individual can do, right? But intention, having the right team member, and the right team member is the right team member for you and the culture you want to build. The right team member is the person who's gonna, when Brave needs an extra 3 hours after classes are done to make the rest of those phone calls, they're willing to stay without asking you. They stayed and say, Kenny, sorry, man, I actually stayed another 3 hours just to get the list done because I really felt like we'd get another 5 members for this month.
Let's go on the extra mile.
They're going the extra mile without asking you. It's initiative.
Finding what motivates the person beyond monetary compensation is actually a very unique topic. It's got me to think, even for our account executive and receptionist role, they're both the same thing, however way you want to call it. It's a very sales-heavy role. You're at the front desk. You're kind of the face of Brave in the evenings. When I thought about it, I'll tell you what I thought about it, is beyond the pay structure, number one, are they allowed to work out during their shifts? Of course. I'm going to give them the opportunity to. That's a luxury. Now, are they going to get paid during that time they work out? No. But they get the chance to still get their training in, right? Another perk is, the ability to get commission. That's more so related to the compensation route. But I mean, to your point, I started thinking of just different ways that one can get compensated. And another thing I started thinking, this is kind of a different aside, is when growing your team, what's a question you should ask? And something I noticed that is pretty cool is asking someone that wants to be on your team this question. Ask them, where would you like to see our company in 5 years? You have control. You have the magic wand. Where do you want to take it? Based off where you believe it's going. Getting them to answer that is very exciting for a couple reasons. Number one, if you see the person light up, good. They're getting excited. They're already getting excited at the thought of where it can go. Number two, you're creating buy-in. Back to your point about getting the person to be hooked off of where this is going. Just like anything, your relationship, your life. If you don't know where it's going, look how confusing it gets. Right? Red flags, question marks. Doesn't really feel good. Right? So same thing for when someone is starting to work for your company. Give them an idea. Let them, better yet, have the idea. And then actually take it into consideration and go, okay. You might go, one, holy shit. This happened to me in some of my interviews. I'm like, they're saying all the things I wanted to go. In other ways, it's like, oh, that's a good idea. I never thought of it like that. And you're actually getting intel from people that want to represent you.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with that. But standards should be kept high. I'm gonna just leave it at that. And I think that building the right team, there are those people, and I'm arguing both of your guys' point in the sense of oh yeah, this guy's good enough or this person's good enough. It's no, I disagree. I think there is that person that is an all-star player. It's just you haven't found them yet. And or you haven't built the company that has the right, you haven't figured out the internal processes to understand what you're looking for. You could bring on somebody that's an all-star player, but you wouldn't even know if you don't have the right systems and processes in place. You could try to get them excited about Brave and this and that. I could get them excited about Q Films, but you might not have the internal structure to handle that all-star player. And you might lose that all-star player. I've had that before. I'll be honest. But you learn from that. But once you start to understand your business in and out, and you have the systems and processes in place, and you are able to bring on that individual, you will notice a difference. I have an all-star player on the team. I notice the difference. I notice it 100%. So if for you guys, whether it's a all-star receptionist, all-star trainer, all-star coach, It's a matter of what you decide. If you say I'm good, Kenny, you say I'm good at 60%. It's okay. I'll just, you know what? I'll get the calls done. I'll stay till 10:30. What? It's my business. It's not their business. Why would they stay till 10:30 for that? You are making that excuse. You are justifying their actions. You're justifying the bar for them. But if you have 5, 10 people who are at here and you don't have to say anything, and there are people like that, you don't have to say anything and they're putting out fires for you and they're doing that extra thing for you, that's an all-star player. And you're not that you have to go, not that they have to go extra all the time, but they care in certain scenarios, because shit is going to hit the fan one day. Something's going to happen. Parent might lose their shit over something of a class, something of some training, and you see how they handle that. You see the behavior, right? An all-star player is going to figure out how to come up with solid solutions on that. They might bring it up to you and say, Kenny, you know what? The structure of this class isn't very good. I know you like it, but here, I propose this. I think this would be a better way. If you're a good leader, you're going to take that idea into consideration. If you're a bad leader, you're going to be like, no, this is the way this works. Go back and do your job. And you diminish that, you hinder that fire. But if you allow an all-star player to do what they are meant to do, but having proper systems and having a good sandbox for them.
There also might be a moment where they give a dumb idea, though.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Something
I'm not
like
saying
that, and you have to be like, hey, I disagree. Thank you for your input.
No, totally. But allowing them to thrive in a system that's well built will allow you to find those players. But if you accept the 60%, if you accept the 50%, you're like, man, I just got to throw money at them. Maybe it's the money issue.
I think this percentage
Hey,
is
man,
lower.
this is FYI. I got some 100%ers.
That's good.
Yeah, which is great.
I know. It just to clarify, just in case anybody gets confused.
Yeah,
But
I'm not actually.
I completely agree.
I'm not actually telling specific examples of their business because I don't know what happens behind the scenes. I'm just letting them know that if you accept that bar, it'll stay at that bar.
And I think like everybody will teach and do things and run their business a different way, but at the end of it, as long as like kind of going back to intention, if you feel like they're giving 100% of them, that might be different than 100% of you, but 100% is being put into the culture. And I think that at the end of the day, it could be different, could be a different way of how you go about it. But if the job is getting done and they're putting 100% in, then the culture is maintaining its excellence.
What I really like too is, you guys remind me of the fact that creating clear-cut expectations from the moment they begin is so much more. It's so much more able for them to be able to accomplish and do than just all of a sudden changing up. And maybe you just go low expectations in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you're telling this person, hey, I need this. And they're like, this job went from being super chills to being like you being a completely different person. So I really love the way one of my mentors said this when I worked and managed at Good Life. This was such a trip for me when I heard it. And bear with me with this one. He said, Kenny, here's the thing. We've been hiring a lot of people. Some decent talent's been coming in through the door. But we have an issue. People will come 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months in. They're gone. He's like, we got to find a way to fix this. And I'm like, I'm 120% on board with what you're saying. Like, I'm sick and tired of it too. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into these people. They're gone by the 7th month mark. I want to hit a moment where I could say someone's under me for a year. And he said this. He's like, you know how we're going to fix it? I'm like, man, tell me, please. I'm all ears. He said, scare them out of the position. You want to grow an all-star? You want to get someone on your team that's going to be a shark? You have high expectations for you wanting to be the number 1 club in the province? Well, we need the results. Scare them out of it. And I was like, okay, cool. Tell me more. He said, tell them you're going to take work home. Tell them you're going to have to stay later than you should. Tell them that there's going to be a lot of no's that come their way. Tell them there's going to be moments where they're going to second guess themselves on why they did this. Like convince them out of it. And he's like, watch what happens. And I remember when I made that shift going about those interviews, it was really cool psychologically to see that feeling of people wanting to be like, oh, I want to prove myself that I'm able. Oh, that sounds interesting. I'll do whatever it takes mentality. I'll do whatever it takes. And it was really cool because what came out of that was people that I got to personally see become managers, and people that I got to really like just kind of see them grow before my eyes, because it was never like, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't tell you about this part of the business that sucks. It was like, yeah, let me tell you about the things that actually suck, because there's things that suck about any business, and you got to be crystal clear and aware that you can handle it. And in the process of selling them out of it, it reminds me now to recognize that you got to have high expectations. And when you do from the get-go, there's so much higher to be met, as opposed to someone feeling like you're switching out on them. And now you have these just random, unclear expectations that went from, oh yeah, it's your first 3 months, we're chilling, to now you better work because you're going from here to here, when it was here the whole time to what your point was.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that all-star players understand that bar. So there isn't, of course there's going to be pressure, it's going to be uncomfortable, there's going to be those late nighters, etc. But those individuals will inevitably thrive in those scenarios.
And I think to add, man, like, we're all, especially me, I'm in a very early stage of my business. I think for anyone who's listening that is ready to grow your team for the first time, there's no more important time to pick the right person. Like, especially now that I'm thinking out loud, and you recognize, like, if this is your first coach that you have under you, or your first receptionist, think about how your members and your customers are going to kind of look at that as. Like, this is your first opportunity in time to recognize that you're perhaps creating someone that's going to be on your team for a long time. Hopefully. Like, you want to pick the right fit. And I think that's such a culture thing. I think the moment you know your culture, the moment you know what your business values in you, it becomes easier to kind of bring it down. And I'm currently in a spot where I'm interviewing 6 of our members. So I'm lining up 6 existing members one by one. I'm having interviews with them. And even for me, man, like, it's kind of a good problem to have, because it's like, man, like, they all have what it takes. But now it's like, okay, I'm pinpointing what are kind of the specific things now outside of the coach and member relationship that really stand out. Because ultimately I can only choose 1, 2. And I'm going to have to say no to some others. But it's going to be interesting to kind of see who kind of like sticks out from the rest as far as what we're really looking for in this role.
Yeah, for sure. I think in every role there's different points of being able to be creative and having a hard red tape. At the end of the day, I think as a receptionist, not to bash receptionists, but there is a system, there is a specific role and responsibilities that can be translated in other receptionist roles, right? So you have to be the one to mold them into your system. And the bar you set tomorrow is the bar. Because after that, you say, Stacy, I want you to do 10 more calls every day. She's going to look at you like you have 4 eyes. What do you mean? My job initially, you told me 5. You're doubling it on me now? That means I have to spend an extra 2 hours, knowing that it's not going to take an extra 2 hours. It's going to be aligned with, their day-to-day. But now that you've raised the bar, it's too late. That person's going to feel resentment and they're going to quit. And maybe that's a good thing for you, because then you learn your lesson and then you hire someone that can do the 10 or 15 or 20 calls. But at the end of the day, you're going to be the one having to mold them, not you. And I know we have this tendency to build friendships and mix them with business. And it's totally okay to have friends and be friends with individuals that you work with. But at the end of the day, business doesn't care about those emotions. Business doesn't care about those friendships. Business is cash in, cash out, as cold as that sounds. But if you're losing money because you're like, Stacy does 60% of her work, that's you. It's affecting you. It's affecting your bottom line. It's affecting how you run your day-to-day. It's affecting how you sleep at night, because you're okay with it. And then you start justifying, and it becomes this downward trend. So that's it.
I love that. I love the classic non-verbal Indian head nod that's like global. Like, Brother Shane, you know this one, right? What does this mean?
finish.
This means finish, right? So listen, if you're out there and you want to save time and you're out with your team and you're growing your team culture and the interview just finished and you want them to know how you wish to proceed, just please give them these. Just don't break it.